Growing your business in these days might be challenging, to say the least. The problem always is you want to have more revenue, but what's revenue? We actually need more profit. So I invited someone who is focused on exactly that, passionate about increasing profit, your profit. Hello and welcome, Mike Ogilvie.
Hi, Niels. Lovely to be here.
Thank you very much for taking the time, and we get straight into the topic. I remember I saw you speaking in London, where you said that many businesses forget to change, and because they don't change when a major crisis hit, they're not going to make the cut. And you included high street brands. And as we see now, just 2020, Topshop owner Arcadia filed for bankruptcy, a major, Selfridges. We have major brands getting into serious trouble. What, in your opinion, is the reason? Because we can assume, at least I think, that there are very smart people, or hopefully there are very smart people running these businesses. Why don't they see that they have to change before the crisis happens? What's your opinion on that?
I think it sounds awful, but I think it's arrogance. It's too much belief in themselves that their brand is everlasting, and they've not been flexible enough to incorporate enough technology. So there's going to be plenty of brands that are going to continue to be successful, and like Zara, the Zaras of this world still have a good chance because they have very much incorporated technology. They've very much incorporated the areas that are appealing to the consumer. They're not reliant just purely on the footfall in the business, and that's where the British Home Stores, the Philip Green empire, the Debenhams empire, they're such heavy central costs that they lack the flexibility and hadn't incorporated technology to a sufficient degree, so that when they suddenly found that the footfall wasn't there, they weren't able to replace the revenue elsewhere.
So when we talk about cutting costs, of course, many people think first of, okay, I have to reduce the amount of staff I have. But then, of course, people will say, well, when I'm a premium brand, I have to offer excellent service. How do I do excellent service? I need great people. So I need many excellent people. And here we are in a dilemma where on the one side, I want to say great customer service is crucial for my business. On the other side, I need to reduce costs. Can I actually just replace people with technology?
No, I don't think you can. I think it certainly is possible, and I think future generations you probably can replace people with technology as long as the sale process is still has got some sort of wow factor that currently is provided by people. But I think it just depends the level of cost. So people are one side of the cost, but a lot of these empires that are failing now, they've got such massive central costs in terms of building premises costs that far outweigh their costs, their people costs. And so if they were able to suddenly find that they could rationalize there, it would make it much easier. But that's the problem. They've left it too late. Just look, the supermarkets have been seeing this coming, and so they've been offering to taking in far more, rather than just food, they've been competing by offering everything else, and also a big technology arm. So they've embraced technology big time. And now we've seen that what they've done is embraced that you don't have to come and shop here, we'll deliver to you. So they're actually completing a totally new customer service dimension. And this is what retailers just haven't even prepared themselves for.
Excellent. I remember that in London, I always or often I used Ocado. Basically, what they do, they do shopping for me. I just put everything in an app, and then they deliver everything not at my doorstep. They deliver it into my kitchen. Of course, not during COVID-19, but normally into my kitchen. So that was a completely new business. But now let's just face the reality of let's say we have a board meeting, and numbers are doing well, and then of course someone like you might pop up and say, we need to change. And then they say, look, Mike, we have the unions. We have a great brand. We're going to have social media issues as soon as we start to do these kind of changes. People will fear for their jobs. Maybe we have an employer's brand damage, so we have to spend more on recruiting afterwards. How do I convince senior management of the need to change when it's running really well? Because let's face it, for years and years and years, they had an excellent business running, heavily profitable. How do I see the problem when everything is running so well?
I always remember an old saying about the the seeds of doom are sown in good times. And I can't remember who said it, but it's always registered to me whenever I've come across this. And I've been dealing with some businesses at the moment that are going really well. And I'm saying to them, I said, look, prepare for something that's going to happen. So we have to look at the fundamentals. And I said, the fundamentals of business are really quite simple. And simple doesn't mean it's easy, but the fundamentals of business are quite simple. You know, you've got your costs, and you can cut your costs, but you can only cut them so far. Fixed costs you can't cut. Your variable costs, if you cut them too far, you can't give a service. So so the only areas you can concentrate is on improving your sales, where in theory there is no limit. You can increase it. So many people focus on costs, but don't actually look at the difference between fixed costs and variable costs. So what they've got to do is actually identify their ability to be flexible. And I think that's the issue that I'm seeing. And so when I'm seeing businesses going well, I say, right, what could go wrong? Thank God I've had businesses with lots of money in the bank account. So when their sales in the hospitality world, their sales have fallen off a cliff. One of them has actually pivoted completely and gone online. Within 6 months, they thought they were going to lose their business completely. They reckon they will now become the largest agency business in the UK within the next 2 years, and that's a dramatic. So that's in not just marketing in terms of advertising, but that's actually promoting businesses where they used to be in exhibitions, for example. They pivoted completely. It's almost like a pirouette rather than a pivot, where they can still offer the face-to-face stuff, but the key has been the talent that they've recruited to allow the flexibility of thinking to suddenly embrace technology, and then be able to communicate that to the clients, so that the client said, "Wow." You know, whether it's the government, whether it's retailers. I mean, they went off to a big, without sort of talking out of school, big European conglomerate. And they thought they were going to have to charge on price. And these people just looked at them and said, wow, we just love the difference that you represent compared to what we're normally faced with. And these are people who are used to be face-to-face exhibitions, conferences, party deliverers, etc., totally transformed. And that's flexibility of thinking that management need to think about.
Yeah. Excellent. Now, of course, one more issue. PricewaterhouseCoopers just recently analyzed 2,500 public companies over the last 19 years. And they found out that CEO turnover is at a record high. The average CEO lasts roughly about 5 years. That, in most European countries, is just a tiny bit more than one general election. In the UK, it would be a one-term CEO, speaking in political terms. So couldn't that become a major issue when, let's say it's going really well, then you want to start one of these changes, which probably has an effect in maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 years' time. When you have these high CEO turnovers, which always means a new person comes in, new strategy, no mission, vision, value statements, all these elevator posters, all the motivational stuff left, right, and center. When we have the high CEO turnover, how do you want to convince someone when the numbers are going well? And let's face it, their bonus is heavily based on the profit. Investing in a change means their bonus is lowered. How do you want to convince someone who most likely knows, I'm here for maybe 5 years or less?
I agree. And I think the problem is the city. The city is now got into such short-term thinking that they're expecting instant results. They're expecting somebody to come in with a magic wand. And so you and I know when you're talking about leadership, and when I'm talking about business growth, leadership is so important. You've got to be able to look at the vision. You've got to be able to define your what and be totally clear about your why when you define your what. I'm finding so many businesses have forgotten what their what is, let alone asking themselves why. They've actually just carry on regardless, and they're caught up in the momentum wheel, where they have suddenly lost track of what they're doing and why they're doing. And this is really important. So when you've got changes in personnel at the top, because the city are not happy, what the city should be looking for is always looking at the long-term vision of what we're trying to achieve. Where are you taking this business? Even if you are not going to be at the helm in 5 years' time, have you got something that the next person can hand over rather than somebody who comes in who has to totally revise what they're doing and come and changing? I mean, when you look at Marks and Spencer's, I always think what a great business that is. Thank God they got the food side. Otherwise, they would also be consigned to the barracks. So these guys come in. They have the personality, and they think just by redesigning the clothes and the floor, the way that's presented on the floor, is such short-term thinking. So it has an initial draw, but they've lost track of what they're trying to do. Where is Marks and Spencer's going in the long term? Nobody knows that.
True.
Well, at least I haven't seen it. And so all they seem to be
Neither did I.
And I think this is a typical example, and it's going to be awful to think that Marks and Spencer is going to be the next casualty.
Yeah, absolutely. So when people are now listening to this podcast, and they might think, okay, we need to do something. Maybe someone is not on board level, but someone is, let's say, higher senior management, but not board level. So they can't decide directly, which means that would be the easiest way to do it. What are Mike Ogilvie's top 3 tips for the year 2021, what businesses need to do now to be sure that they are profitable at the end of this year?
I think the most important thing that you can do is, when you're talking about sales, you've either got to decide, is it the number of customers, is it the price they're spending, or is it how often they're spending, or is it the mix? The reality, it's the mix. But the crucial one is the price they spend. And what I always say to people is, if I'm going to ask you to increase your margin, whether that's by you cutting some of your variable costs so you can make more out of it, so you can keep your price similar, or I'm going to ask you to increase your price, there has to be a reason why I, as a consumer, I'm going to want to pay that price. So I'm going to need to understand the value in my mind, and I need to have the business to be able to communicate the value. So my challenge to all businesses, how will you stand out from your competition? How will you, I always think sweet in a sweet wrapper, that sweet, everybody's got that sweet, but the wrapper can be different. And the wrapper is the service, and it's the way, it's the presentation, the way you communicate the value to the consumer. And I think that's really important now, because you're going to have technology taking the personality out of sales. You've got to find a different way of communicating the value of your proposition.
Excellent. This is excellent advice. Of course, I'm going to put your contact data into the show notes of this podcast so people can contact you directly in case they have any other ideas or maybe want to chat with you, or what I would highly recommend, book you as the speaker for their conference or their consultant coach for their business. So, Mike, at the end of this podcast, there's only one thing for me left to say. Thank you very much for your time.
It's great being with you, Niels, and sharing a few ideas with you.